know soon.
I hope so too.
that one, but he said he has a new one. Is that it?
This is a new one, yeah. This is the email we just got 2 minutes ago. I think this is probably it. Is this the one that we, yeah, okay.
He is super grateful if we can do that. After you do that, tell me once you do it.
Just making sure. Yeah, it looks good.
So after you do that, what we want to do is make one slideshow with all of them.
Okay. One of them is just a PDF.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
The other.
Whose is a PDF?
Whose was that? I think that was
that's
Maru's. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other two were both
Okay.
keynotes.
So what we want to do is take all the stuff create a folder called desk, and put all the stuff that we're not showing today into that desk folder.
That we're not trying.
The Skype one is not going to happen.
There's definitely a more efficient way to do
There
that.
you go. I was just going to suggest that. Hold the option key down. Okay. And call it desk and just leave it on the desk.
Yeah.
You can just click on it when you name it.
Huh.
If you click without double clicking, just click.
Yeah.
There.
Looks like everything's working all right.
Yes, we're just fixing our optics here.
Okay.
And then,
Okay, got everything. Yeah.
so we don't need that now. You can get rid of it.
What an interesting group of.
Let me see.
Yeah, so how would I put the PDFs? Just like open the individual
Why don't you
pictures in
call? Yeah, no, it's hard. Ask Mara to come here because maybe she has a PowerPoint.
there? Okay. Is she
Mara?
in the other room?
Yeah, so Andrea and Mara should both come here. Thank you.
Have you read this Richard Thayer? Richard Thayer from Sacramento. He's a landscape architect. I just got a cool book reference. It sounded like it might be geography related. Not really.
Not familiar.
Hi everyone, hey Victoria.
Hi, also good
Hi,
to
my name's
see you, Amisha.
Nice to meet you.
Amisha, meet Andrea Polli.
Nice to meet you, Andrea.
So nice to see
And
you.
it's your show.
Yes.
Cool. Cool. You guys are starting at 7?
Yes, we are. Indeed. So let's see.
Do you need a hand with anything?
I'm
else?
good right now, but pay attention for me for next time. So what we do usually, which I was hoping somebody would tell you, is we have the main screen right here, and then names of people, and then their slides, and we make one big slideshow. I don't know if we'll be able to do it this time, but we do have 10 minutes, so let's give it a shot.
observers.
Yeah, I think nobody got the message that they're supposed to make one mega slideshow, so we have these separate things.
Oh, okay.
So how do I add this to here?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
I'm saying desktop. Oh, it's saying what the desktop would be, so desktop pictures.
Because you could just put them all on the desktop and then just click the one, their own presentation.
No, they're
Or-
here. I'm just trying to make this as a main screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so.
Do you need something?
Do you
like
have a
in your presentation?
PowerPoint of your presentation?
Yeah,
Can I have it?
sure. It's having problems with the PDF?
No, just we tried to have one large
I'm sorry, yeah.
PowerPoint file.
Well, I think that's supposed to be 2 hours, but maybe. No, it's usually less.
This?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is 1 hour max.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then
Fast.
chatting. And it's very intimate today, so.
Yes. Are you kidding me?
I'm excited. Heather and I are designing a redox recorder that we can use to get the honor stand and then see if we would count how many we do that on there. So I'm excited.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. Just need some optimization stuff now and see all the times and just making sure that we get reduced.
That's amazing.
So Paul is asking if we have Spotlight set up on our computer. I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. He said he was gonna bring it and set it up.
No, I don't have actually usually do.
For why does he
Unintended.
need it?
Did you get his updated?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Which
Sammy,
is
I can't wait to hear it.
Are you gonna present?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just
The next
for
one.
using a
Meal and
pointer.
that one, right? Or is that?
Yeah.
No,
But we can use a mouse, can't we?
I think we're wanting
I like
next
mouse.
week, Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, and then Milan's coming the week after that.
Oh, okay. I think it's the 19th. Or is that the? Yeah.
No, I think Milan was coming on the 26th.
Okay.
Did I get that wrong? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, just be prepared. I wasn't sure.
That's my fault. I will check my emails though, make sure I have that correct one.
Okay.
Well, he's stodgy. We were at a workshop together right before I went to India and he'd already bought his plane tickets and he said, well, maybe I'll be there. I was like,
Are they just gonna do it from their PowerPoint, or do they need to be put together?
I'd love to put them together, but it's maybe too
I'm
late.
hiring like in a minute. Sorry about that.
Then Mara's bringing hers, or are you gonna email it?
I'm putting in a surprise, but
Okay,
I prefer.
that's fast.
Okay.
Yeah, if they're all just on the desktop, that should be good.
So we have quite a large audience of people streaming in, and the talks are also archived, and Mark set it up. If anybody wants a link to the stream to send to their friends, Alika will give it to you.
Great.
Nobody? No takers?
No.
Now, yeah, you can send that to me.
Okay.
If it's possible. Or
It's already all over the place.
It's on Facebook. I
Oh.
just shared it on Facebook on the Art Science Center.
That's perfect. You're looking for
Yeah, oh yeah, that's true. They didn't even hear it. Yeah. But also on Twitter and on Instagram I shared it, yeah.
And,
like,
and it's archived, so
Yeah,
for
yeah.
people who are sleeping on it, it's
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a really great archive of these things. I had a feeling this one would be more quiet because it's such a crazy circumstance right now.
Upheaval time.
Upheaval. The fires. I decided I love cooking shows, and I went to Netflix to watch Michael Pollan's new show Cooked.
Oh.
Have you heard of it? It's fantastic, right? He goes with 4 elements. And so the first show is fire.
Did you say I don't really want to be watching the show on fire right now?
Why did I decide to watch the show right now?
Fire.
It's actually quite magnificent. It starts with the Aborigines in Western Australia, where they just like, you know, go actually, you know, controlled fire is created along these amazing vast paths, and then they can feel the earth and catch these lizards that are already cooked.
It's women. It's
I
women.
know.
I don't remember what he showed in the video. I did watch it, but it's women who do it.
That's right. It's women who do
The
it.
men just sit around and wait.
No. Men, that's kind of close. Men go out and get the big wild
Yeah, like
animals,
once
and
in a
most of
while.
the time come home empty-handed.
Most of
And
the
the
days
women
wait
like
for
the
winter.
lizards.
Do you want it? I have it
I
now
would
in
probably
packet.
just put it on the
So
desktop.
the big prestige,
Like put it in
So the big prestige is to come home with a big animal, but most of the time apparently you come empty-handed, of course. It's really hard to catch a big animal.
Mm.
With the tools they have anyway. Although there was a video of one person who was being interviewed carrying a rifle.
like that?
It was much easier now.
And we're opening like each of them.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. How can I like check
Oh,
this?
How
Mm. But
you
you're
doing,
like
Misha?
also.
Long time no
Oh.
see.
here, let me go.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Kid, so I was just looking at some baby photos.
Ah, you're an auntie.
I am full on auntie.
Nice.
I have 5 aunts, so I find it weird that this kid only has 1 aunt. You know, we'll cousins and stuff, but yeah.
Right. That's so cool. Boy or girl?
Well, named kind of pertinent for all the fire discussion, named Agni, which is this like
The god
elemental.
of fire.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, hopefully the gods of fire spare me.
Oh yeah, how are you?
I'm
doing?
evacuated
You're
as we
like-
speak.
Okay.
So yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, watching that show is like, oh my god, I'm trying to
I should go
relax.
back to water.
Exactly, we're trying to relax, right?
Although a cooking show with elementals, fire would be a logical
Has to
first
be the first
element.
That is the logical person. The next one, thank God, was water, so.
Yeah,
we're
that's
all
better
good.
for you.
That's what's gonna happen next week, right?
Oh, okay.
We're gonna get the floods.
Yeah. Oh no.
And then it'll be earthquake.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, maybe stagger your viewing if you really believe there's a link there. Maybe like wait a couple years before you watch the Earth one
I
somewhere
think
else.
so, yeah, just
Somewhere
keep-
else. So we
Or
can
I'll
all
let
get
you
out
know,
of California
I'm
in
planning
time.
to watch the Earth now.
Yeah, right. Live tweet it so we can all get out of California.
Yeah, you made it. So you want to try to?
Yeah, let's try it, yeah.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, it's great for these screens because
We're a small group, so
Yeah.
we can accommodate this
Yeah, yeah.
without feeling stressed.
right.
Kit! Yay!
So let's go to any browser
Okay.
first. Mhm.
I think that we're on Wi-Fi, hopefully not on web. There we go, there she is.
This one, I think, right?
Yes.
Well, just leave it where it is then. Download. Is that working?
Mark should be coming up soon.
Oh.
Where he is.
Now I see it.
Yeah. Then somewhere.
Oh, sorry, I just got your message to download this.
Oh, no problem.
Oops.
It's part of the fun. how about a new find window? Downloads, I'm guessing. And then,
There we go.
Here we go. Open. Oh, it needs a password.
Old joke.
I assume
No,
no.
thanks, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not analytics people. I mean, we sort of are, but not to them.
Oh,
Okay, then I can show you how this works. So you go on the top. Yeah, see this thing at the top? Oh, choose your device. We gotta plug it in
Makes
first. Okay,
Okay.
continue. Doesn't matter if I recognize it or not. There's nothing. Let's do that.
So
We
I
don't care
just
about that.
called Mark, who
Spotlight.
operates the streaming,
Okay.
and we are
Is that just to advance the slides?
Press to start tour. Yeah. But there's more. This I'll show you what we do. Okay. We want to get rid of this thing. We're going to the tour. So this is. So what you want to do is set up, not turn off highlight. We want laser only. Highlight
Oh,
off.
so it creates a dot.
And then it's
or-
just a dot. And then
Okay.
I personally like purple, like that. And you can choose the size, and then see it's.
downstairs monitor.
Oh,
There
that's
it is.
great. That's great.
And then it shows up on every screen. We
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
presentation with like 5 screens yesterday, and it's all over. And then when you broadcast, everyone can see it. And these things, right, if you use a laser, it just reflects in someone's eye and blinds them.
Yeah.
So they owe me because, I've sold so many of these.
You let
And
your
it's just
screen-
that arrow at the top. Okay.
We just streamed the whole download process.
Oh, yeah, I changed a couple.
No, I'm just saying we're already streaming. We're already live.
We are good. Yeah. So Logitech, you should.
Get some sponsorship.
Oh, so
You might not be convinced we're sponsored by Logitech.
it's a Wii, so you don't have to point at anything.
Oh, neat. Okay, cool.
And then forward.
And it really is like an
And if
apple.
you can make it fancier so it like
Yeah.
enlarges things and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well. Okay, welcome everybody. Here, all of you who came, thank you for coming. I know it's extraordinary times. And out there, welcome. We are going to have a very interesting and different session today. Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous were formed about 10 years ago by Piero Luigi Scaruffi in San Francisco. And we started them around 2007 as well. It was small groups and people coming and going, but what happened in the last 5 years is pretty phenomenal. There's about 35 groups around the world that meet in these lasers and communicate their ideas. It's meant more like an exchange of ideas from sciences and the arts, and really to show where this intersection happens. So this evening is particularly interesting because we're hosting Andrea Polli, who is our resident artist, and she gave a lecture on Tuesday. She just opened an exhibition, and she is here talking today with Dr. Paul Weiss, who she has been collaborating with together with a larger group. So the exhibition is one thing, and this presentation will be another thing, which I'm very curious about because it's been going on for a while, but we haven't been kind of known what's really going on, so it'll be fantastic to hear that. So the way this is going to go, we're going to start with Elena first, who comes to us from Spain. And I met her in Austria, actually, very briefly, through a student of ours, Cristina Iglesias. And she happens to be in LA. We do this a lot. We catch people as they're passing by. So she'll start by talking about her work with women in the media arts and networks. And I'll tell you, even though it seems like it doesn't connect to the other topics,
you will see that in the end it always does, somehow. I'm not sure how, but I'm sure it will be. She will be followed by Maru Garcia, who's a second-year grad student in Design Media Arts and came specifically to study with Art and Science Center, and also Rebecca Mendez in Design Media Arts. And she just came back from Mexico City, where we both participated in a conference called Taboo, Transcendence, and Transgressions. That's it. She presented her work there, and I wanted her also to share it with you. And then we'll hear a longer version from Andrea as a featured artist and Paul Weiss. So please give a warm welcome to Elena. And Elena, which one is yours?
Yeah, the pointer's the top one. You can go on, but this will slowly drift down.
You don't have to worry about it. Come here. So just tell me which one is yours. Yeah, this one. Okay. Do you want presenter to us?
No,
Slideshow.
just, yeah.
All right, here we go. So you can just go here and.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Elena and I come from Spain. I'm a PhD candidate and a research assistant in UPV in Valencia, and it's my first time in US, so this is a big experience. Now I'm based in Pittsburgh, in CMU, where I work with Carol Fritz, who's an expert in women in computer science, and I work as well with the Studio for Creative Inquiry in the College of Fine Arts there. And before I was in Austria, in the center that Victoria collaborates with the Kunstuniversität in Linz, that are partners of the Ars Electronica Festival. And yeah, I'm going to talk about my PhD and about my research. So I cannot show so many results, but maybe you can help me when you see my situation. Yeah, so yeah, the title of my research is Female Networks of or Women Associations in Arts and Technology. And this is a topic that, like all the transdisciplinary research, combines many fields, which is a good thing and a bad thing because you don't belong anywhere. Sometimes you don't identify with some of them. So my research is gathering like social science methodologies, digital humanities, data analysis, women's studies approach, and feminist methodologies, art theory and history, and art science and technology. So when I am with girls from computer science, they think I know how to code, but I don't know how to code, but I know about the theory and about the history of women coding. And when I am with artists, it's more or less the same. So I'm like in the middle of that. But I think the results are much more interesting when you combine disciplines. So yeah, my research is, as I said, this one, and I will show you just a few of the associations and initiatives that I study that are mainly from the 80s, 90s, but actually they are from the beginning of computer arts, that women are gathering together in arts and technology. And I will show you like a main ones, but my intention is to categorize them and to analyze them by their purpose and manifestos and structures. So we have like archives, workshops, collectives, programs, conferences, symposiums, feminist hacker spaces, and books and exhibitions. So like from the 91 with VCN Matrix, born in Australia with a female collective. They were like the first cyber feminists who were doing activism on the net side, and then later we will see how it's connected to the theory of women and gender and technology. Then the first aggregation of cyber feminists and women in digital arts is called All Boys Network. They were tired of the All Boys Network meetings and networks actually, so they created this platform in 1997, and it's not active anymore. It was born in Berlin, but they have the archive with a lot of bibliography and references and so on. So from all the initiatives that I'm going to show you, I tried to contact all the main members or founders, and at the end we will see that they are all connected in a kind of global rhizome. Then we have Faces, which is for me a very important because it's a mailing list born in '96 by these 3 artists and curators. And Kathy is here from California. I'm meeting her tomorrow, actually. And yeah, they were meeting all the time in any digital arts festival. So at the end, they say, okay, we are meeting in real, so why don't we stay together, connected through a mailing list? And from this '96 until today, it's still working, and many new artists, female, are taking part of it, and they are opening their awareness and ethics as well to welcome not only women, but another identities. And yeah, in this way, they all stay connected and they can share all their exhibitions, their works, even vacancies for jobs, and it's a way to stay strong virtually. This is the result of a project in Leonardo journal about women, art and technology. Was published in 2003, and I hope there would be a second edition about women, art and tech. And then FemTechNet, that one of the main members is teaching here, Veronica Paredes. And they also have a platform, and they aim to be a network also of connection of women in digital arts, any kind of technology with artistic of social applications. And they organize also conferences and meetings, and they are all spread around US and also Europe. And as I said, members of this initiative are part of another initiatives. And then Eclectic Tech Carnival, they are a gathering of people who critically use, share, study, improve everyday information technologies in the context of free speech and open hardware movements. And they celebrate like every 2 years or 1 year a different hackerspace or festival, and they invite people to organize themselves if they want. So the last one was in Italy, in Bologna, this last October. And yeah, then in Catalonia, there's Donestech. Like, it's also a hackerspace, and they have a platform where they share the information of another partners, or they have a lot of workshops about social awareness and security on the net for women. And they also made a documentary about women in technology in Spain. And they have this collage of the documentary that you can see there about women in mathematics and engineering. And then in Vienna, there is an atelier, a workshop called Mrs. Baltasar Laboratory, where they also teach and change the different approaches of technology for women. And the main founder of this lab, she has traveled abroad for her thesis, and she was also in Middle East countries and promoting this idea of only female spaces as a safe spaces in order to make the technology more approachable to women and girls. And then in Pittsburgh, there's the Deep Lab project. It's a hackerspace where artists and computer scientists come together, and they have a book which is which you can download. And the difference between these initiatives is some of them are anti-academia, and some are like this inside the academia. They belong to the College of Fine Arts. And then here in UCLA, the students of Victoria Vesna, they opened the Void Lab, with an intersectional feminist collective for women, non-binary gender, non-conforming trans and queer people to express individual identities through arts and technologies. So the girls belonging to this collective, they were doing workshops voluntarily to girls and kids, and yeah, I had the pleasure to meet them in Austria. And then what I analyze is, like, currently this year we have this festival, which is the Festival for Computer Arts, the only dedicated for women. And we see in New York in the '86, there was already one exhibition for women in computer arts. So I want to know what has not changed, if there's still the same activity by women. Like, for example, I was in Virginia, and my mother was a computer symposium. It was really, really good. It was inspired by the book My Mother Was a Computer from 2005. And yeah, there was top panels about gender and video games and gender and technology. It was really interesting. And then this last February, next February, here in California, you have this Alliance of Women in Media Arts and Technology. It's also a conference with exhibitions and workshops. And then in Philadelphia, they have this last year, this Women and Technology Archive and exhibition. So it's countless. This one in Vancouver this last year will happen next year about also women in electronic arts. And this one is happening now in Dortmund in Germany. And it makes like a chronology of women in arts and technology from the 60s. And this is the one I organized in Valencia with my supervisor. We have this project called Ateneo, and it aims to be a network space for women from engineering and science with women artists that come together to exchange their knowledge. And yeah, we celebrate this conference with workshop. So to understand my hypothesis briefly, how it was born, I was in the middle of, I was working with my research group in festivals like Sonar, and so on. I was just funding like women in tech, women who code, where are the women in STEAM, and so on, and thousands of initiatives talking about the lack of women in technology. And in the statistics like shown by UNESCO, like the less interest of women in engineering and computer science mainly. All the time, this is on TV, on the radio, on the internet. And in Spain, for example, computer science is 12%. And I think, only in CMU, this professor I'm working with, she reached to have 50% of women in computer science, but that's not usual. And on the other side, I had like a month of women in media arts and art and tech. So I was thinking, so what is the lack of women interested in tech? They are interested in tech. I find them in media arts. This is the visualization of the project of Ars Electronica Archive called Women in Media Arts. Yeah, so it has not always been like this. We see like women were 50% in the 80s of computer science, and it was after the 80s when it just go down to the 50. So it was like a big crisis. This is based on, like in this book by Mary Hikes, she explains how in the British government they made propaganda like really strong with technology was applied to as a domestic tool and brought for kids, and like from the world it was brought to home. How they start doing propaganda on this way that they created the stereotypes that only work in our society, because statistics show that in countries that have less equality of gender, they have more women in tech actually. So it's actually based on our culture. And they show how women passed from being in the Second World War the computers of the machines in the war, doing the mathematical algorithms and everything, which was considered a low job because it was made by women. And you can see here the women that took part from the first computer, in charge of, like I don't know how to say to push the bombs in the war. And this was made by hand by these women who were mathematicians. And then the women from NASA as well in 55. And these are some examples of women also in computer arts from the 60s who were easily working with computers with no problem. And as I said, the stereotypes that they created by governments in UK, in US and Europe, it's not only about stereotypes, but also about how they shape technology until the technology we have nowadays. So this, you can find how these artists said that they were working very comfortable with the technologies for arts, but after the 80s, they started developing some tools they didn't feel comfortable at all. So they were trying to accommodate the technology to one kind of audience. And that's how I reached this is another example, like women in electronic music in the 60s. That's how I reached the conclusion that when women were like put out of the world of technology in the commercial sense, women have found their way in the arts and technology space. So as they couldn't or they didn't have interest in the technological studies, they continued developing technology and approaching technology, but through arts. So I say, like, within the framework of the link between women and technology from the first human computers to the current revival of techno-feminist movements, the decrease of female presence in technological careers and jobs since the 80s is opposed to the number of female networks and activists in art and tech. So I presume that if social and political propaganda achieved to exclude women from technological fields, creating gender stereotypes, when technologies started to be implemented on domestic and daily tools, it has been through artistic techniques and feminist approaches like networking, associationism, how women have been able to develop their skills and interest in technology in an alternative space. So it is through artistic and feminist practices, collaboration, interdisciplinarity, that women have continued working with technology, developing alternative systems of creation, and also alternative works through collaboration. And that's how, like, in Eclectic Tech Festival, they want to promote women in tech, but in a completely different anti-commercial way. Yeah, so these are examples of theories of women in gender and technology that my work is based on. And then my work is also based on the theory of networks and rhizomes compared to the biological ones. So what I would like to achieve is to draw something like that with the current alive networks that exist of women in art and tech, and see how they have their initiatives all around the world, but they are all connected because they all know each other somehow. And it's inspired by things like the Women's House in California by Judy Chicago, founded in the 70s. Yeah, and examples that in North America you have very good examples of women associations from even before in the Civil War. Yeah, and well, that's it. That's it. That's my work. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this slide right here connects me to Maru, I think. Okay, Maru, which one's yours?
It's on the desk.
It's cool that you work at the studio.
Okay.
Impossible.
I
Is it not
don't
closer?
know, it's not close.
Oh,
Maybe.
maybe it's because the way we're holding the mouse. What?
It was right when
What's
Colin
going on?
started
I don't know.
as the director, and he,
Oh, okay, I think
so
it
I
will
was
come.
doing a lot of just like background.
Let me
voices
see.
stuff.
Okay, which
Yeah,
one's
it's
yours?
here.
The archive, and like populating the content website.
I know this is a PDF, right? No, we have to open.
The one on the right.
No, maybe.
This one?
I was
Yeah, that
in,
one.
Like 2009 to
It looks empty.
Yeah, here.
and the Deep Lab sounds familiar. I think it was kind of,
Okay.
something else. It was before.
All right, everybody. So Mara's going to talk about becoming with the other.
So I will set the clock so I don't go farther to the 10 minutes. So thank you very much for this invitation to share my work with you. I'm Maru Garcia. I'm from Mexico. I'm studying currently my second year in my MFA in Design and Media Arts department, and collaborating with the Art Science Center and with Victoria as well. Today I want to talk about something that I discovered has been like probably present like in my whole experience in my research, and this is about like how can we become with the other, how we can inform relationships with other being a non-human. So in my previous research, I can say it comes from my background. I studied my undergrad in chemistry, in plant chemistry actually, and then I did a master's degree in biotechnology. And during these two programs, I was like very interested in the way plants were having their metabolism, and in the first case, like talking about the secondary metabolism of the mandarin. And during my master's degree in biotechnology, I was studying the differences in the metabolism of plants that had like a difference in, well, that were genetically modified to offer resistance to drought. So I was trying to see the differences between these plants that were modified compared with the wild types. So that was my first attempt to encounter this non-human species mediated through science. And of course, after a lot of like things like working in the industry and things, I got this idea that I needed to explore new ways to find these encounters with the other, now like through art. And that's how I came here, and I like got to know all these fabulous like people to work with and this program. So today I will talk about like the projects I've been working related with this. And this was Just Add Water was one of my first projects that I did here. and it's like a story of how I wanted to have a relationship with plants. I was like thinking before I was like preparing this presentation that maybe this can come like from inherent thing, because my grandma and my mom, they are like very used to talk with plants, so maybe that's coming from there. But yeah, I had like a special, I can say, a special connection with them. And during this project, I was trying to put some seeds to sprout, and this was lentils, and I had like this 4,177 seeds sprouting, and for 47 days. And the idea was to develop a relationship with them. I had like the opposite of my projects that I had like previously, now not controlling like all the conditions as I was like used to while I was in the lab. Here at the studio, I was like trying to go further and to experiment this non-controlling, but like this connection that I could have with these plants. So of course this took me to really be careful, or to really care about them, to be all the time getting every day like to water them, to cover them, to uncover them, like a lot of procedures to make them like grow. Of course, during this process, like I can say that we all smile, we all cry, we all suffer, because I was trying to like make them grow, but of course like a lot of things couldn't come as I was expecting, and that made me like understand a lot, and like to be more I don't know, like to drive a more relationship that I was like looking for. So at the end of this time, we all presented in a installation where we all presented ourselves. The ones that were like actually growing properly, the ones that were kind of that didn't develop, even like those ones, or the ones that got contaminated during the process. For example, with microbiology, with microorganisms. So during this time, I also had a log where I was like writing all my experience with them, and this came as a poem at the end, where I was like also sharing like this emotions that I was having during this process. So this was the kind of project that I had first, with this encounter with the other. Another project that came after, it was related with the concept of a vivarium. I got very interested of how humans developed this idea of trying to encapsulate nature in this kind of very beautiful, transparent spaces, ecosystems, where you can have like plants, you can have animals, but they were like very beautiful place in your house inside, right, contained. So I wanted to make like my own interpretations of how a vivarium could be, and I started to work with plants as well and mycelium, and I put a camera and a microscope inside so I could have like a feed of what was happening inside. And this can be like a picture of that first vivarium with this, for example, plants that were coming inside, the mycelium that was growing inside. But also I was trying to look for bigger organisms like this, and having a live feed as well of what has happening inside. So this was my way to interpret like a new vivarium where humans can be also felt part of nature. And well, that was like that attempt. Later and recently I was working with, well, I was like knowing that my relationship with the other was like very based on plants. So I wanted to like explore and go farther what was known for me, that was plants, and now get into even the smaller scale. So I was like very inspired by a lot of people that were working with microorganisms, and I found that the SCOBY, that is this symbiotic culture between bacteria and yeast, could help me to like make this relationship more tangible. These microorganisms work together, and the result of the metabolism is this biofilm of cellulose. So for me, it was like the perfect thing for make this encounter more like more sensorial, more material based, and I started to develop the idea of how could I encounter these microorganisms. And I thought that it would be a good attempt to start like sharing our cultures. In this case, me placing different tanks where I could have different conditions and trying to share my own culture with this new culture, of course, playing with the word culture. And so I started to work in this, like if it was like I don't know, if experience of interchanging ideas. So I had like different tanks. One tank called identity culture, another one death, another one love, another one childhood, and I had different inputs for each of them, and different different inputs, I can say. For example, the one that was related with identity was like my own hair shared like with this culture, and they had like some music and things like that. So for example, this is kind of this identity culture where I was like putting my own hair there, and the result was this mix of cultures that could be like in the same display. This was a result from me like harvesting the material and seeing that these two cultures could like in a way be merged. So this is another of the biofilm that was produced during this time. I was really amazed of how this material was like really soft, really transparent, but at the same time soft. I would say soft. I don't know, it was like very, like it was like an invitation to be more immersed with that. So I found a tank and I had this great idea of how can I be more immersed with these organisms? How can I be spending time with them? And I found a tank. And I created like these conditions of me being able to share time and space with them. Of course, it was like a very intense experience, I can say, a very beautiful experience, very weird, beautiful experience, because you can imagine microorganisms are like very acidic and are also very smelly. So it was like a whole experience, right? I even remember being after this thing, like even weeks, like trying to smell my hair, and it was like, this is lactic acid. Like, yeah, we all changed after this. And yeah, I'm really grateful that I had this opportunity. So after this, yeah, this work was presented in the last fall show of the program, and the result was two videos. One that it was displayed as two projections at the same time, so it was like in a way inviting the audience to be part of the tank, to be inside of the tank. And the other one was in a more intimate display, showing me like in the video experimenting this very particular encounter. And this ended like in this installation showing these two things, what happened inside of the tank in this video projection, and what happened outside, like with the outside point of view in this small tank. So I think that's what I wanted to share with you. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mara. So now we're going to have our featured artists, scientist team. Why am I not able to move this? Do you know why I'm not able to move this? It's very strange. Scary stuff.
Can you drag it down?
It doesn't let me, so I'm just, ooh. Too many things going on here.
Yeah.
We're gonna ignore that. And which one's yours?
Second from the, yeah.
Nope.
That 18.
Second from
The keynote.
Microsoft. Okay, let's kill it again. Let's kill it publicly. So here we go. Let me just force quit
Yeah.
it. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna kill the words too. While we're at it. While we're at it. Okay, so it's this one, right? Open. Voila. Okay, are you presenting together? or-
Yeah. We got it.
So, our featured artist, yes, you don't have to run away. Andrea, Polli, I'm actually so delighted to have you here. We've crossed paths over the years in different places, and it's wonderful to see how her work has evolved. And talking about women and technology, how persistence pays. Because now the projects have really matured to a place where I think you are playing with the big boys. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and do a laser as well with Paul, who will be coming up here in a second. So we're going to talk about the Internet project, which started with a NACFE Futures Conference about 2 years ago, where NACFE here in Southern California brought together probably about 100 scientists and artists and put us in rooms very similar to this based on some general interests that we had. And this group, myself, Paul, Ruth West, Allison Kudla, Nicola Casas, and Beth Cardier, all happened to be interested in the microbiome. So we got together in a room and spent 2 or 3 days just kind of brainstorming, and then we were invited to write a grant proposal to continue to work on our ideas, and we did, and have been working ever since. And so here's our team. Paul and is really our only real scientist. Well, Ruth also is working in crossing between computer science and myself, and also Beth, and then the amazing artists Nicola and Allison. And I'll show a little bit of some of that, some of their work. But I'll pass it on to Paul first.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start with the place a little bit. So you're in sort of House of Nanoscience.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that, and that is we like connecting across fields, and this field developed from people coming together from chemistry, physics, biology, medicine, engineering, arts, and so forth, and respecting each other's goals and approaches, and learning from each other to develop new tools and ask new questions. And so, we went over at the 10th anniversary of the National Nanotechnology Initiative. In about 2 weeks is 15th anniversary of the signing. What it was we'd done and what it is we could do. I'm not going to talk about that, but what I will say is, what we learned to do was work across fields. And it's part of the reason we love having ArcSci here, and we've been now 9 years and 3 months and 10 days. At UCLA, I've enjoyed every minute of our interactions. Some of the things that came together as a result, you've heard about the biosensor arrays that Anne's put together and has come to fruition over the last 20 years, really, merging neuroscience and nanotechnology. And at the time, actually I'll back up a little bit, at the time that this group met down at the National Academy in Irvine, this microbiome initiative was just bubbling up. And what had happened was a group of nanoscientists inspired really by a lot of Anne's work had put together the Brain Initiative in trying to understand what a thought is, what a memory is, what the difference between healthy and malfunctioning neural circuits were, and how to try and understand those circuits. Part of that's nano, a lot of it is not, but it moved forward, I think, because we were able to draw in people from many fields. And so after that, there had been another initiative that most people have not heard of called precision medicine. And it had not involved the nanoscientists, and it really didn't include people outside their community, and it didn't go very far. And that was noticed. And so the folks in the White House who had gotten the Brain Initiative going, and that one said what was missing from the second initiative was the nanoscientists drawing everybody in. And so we did come together, and Jeff Miller, who's now the director of CNSI, and several of us put together this technology roadmap for the microbiome initiative. It was coming together at the time that this NACFI group was meeting, so it was kind of on our brains, and at that time everybody was I think I don't have it on here, everybody was going after the gut, right? Because you just think that's where all the bugs live, but they're not directly accessible, if you know what I mean. And so in our sort of science and engineering side, we go first after the mouth, where you have a couple hundred species that do all kinds of damage, and we have projects that are moving towards startups and everything. And skin is pretty accessible. Actually, there's expertise at UCLA in the vaginal microbiome and 25 years worth of data how to classify different people into 4 different groups that change in different ways. And then we came to this group and said, how about doing an end run around the gut? And we thought, well, we're having digestive trouble, and there are gurgles and all kinds of warning signs that you'd better find a rest stop or whatever else. And then we started thinking, well, we have all this spatiotemporal information, and we have Andrea doing this part, and we have Ruth looking at multidimensional data sets and how to visualize them. What if we could just kind of listen in as a starter and track where things are going, and particularly approach those who can't communicate. So babies run into a lot of digestive problems. Elderly people can't necessarily say something's going to happen, but face a lot of difficulty. It turns out racehorses are very valuable, and if their colon gets twisted up, it's the end of their lives, and there are probably signals you could listen to there. And that sort of launched this group where we got excited in sharing how we might do this. That project officially ended exactly 1 month ago. Terminated. The Keck Foundation had funded the National Academy for 15 years, and then that stopped. And so one of the things we've done is join forces, you'll hear, with some other people around the world who generate power locally, so harvest energy from body motion, and people who work on wearable sensors, collaborators at San Diego and Georgia Tech, and we're setting up a lab in Beijing where there's a sensor center being built. I'll go there in a couple of weeks and see if we can move it forward to really doing something. The NACFI grant was kind of a seed project to get us to meet several times a year and position us to do something interesting in the world.
Awesome.
Hard to check. The next slide is yours.
Yeah. So this is really our slide for the group. So so we're looking at these devices as Paul was talking about. We looked at internal sensors and external sensors, and decided to focus on the external ones. And then we kind of broke down the problem into really a systems and data management and interpretation. At least on my side of it, but then there's a whole other side of it that's about these kind of micro sensors. So as Paul said, we held 2 working group sessions here, and that's where we really broke down, are we doing the internal or the external? We actually did a preliminary patent. We had some challenges in terms of coordinating our group because we're in everybody in a different time zone, you know, all the way to Italy. So we found this time that we could meet virtually once a week, and so started to focus on, I mean, I think there's a lot of different directions that work like this could go, but our focus was in kind of personal health monitoring, and what kind of wearables might people find interesting, and what information might they want to know. I think you should talk about some.
Yes, so this fellow, gentleman, passes through here all the time, and he's probably the leading energy harvester in the world. So he has a lab at Georgia Tech, but then Beijing City, gave him an 1,100 person institute in Beijing. So he flies back and forth all the time, and really just completely leads that field. So I also have a journal. We'll talk about the microbiome cover towards the end. And he's published more papers with us than anybody, including any of the editors who publish editorials every month, in just collecting energy from, you know, a beating heart, or ocean waves, or wind, or rain falling. He's just an amazingly creative guy who agreed to work with us. Also, conveniently, he spends time in Beijing, where we'll set something up.
So kind of looking at, you know, how can we have this device that's untethered and but still give us power and network connection. So for me, oh sure, yeah, the video, yeah. So for me, the way I have been approaching these kinds of bioart projects has been one of very much kind of confusion and curiosity, and not really knowing how to approach them. Most of my work is like the work that you saw in the exhibition. So the way I kind of approach things that I don't really understand is I try to get communities together and who are doing this kind of great stuff, you know, like we've seen from Maru, and get them to interact with me somehow so I can figure things out. So I got this fire damaged adobe in Santa Fe and created a project space called Biocultura. Got an amazing muralist to photograph a Hopi farming community, revitalizing some of the earlier practices of farming, and do a mural on the house. And then we invited people over. Our first event was the Earth Optimism Summit, so we were tied in with the Smithsonian's Earth Optimism event. We were one of their partners. Here's Chip Thomas, who's an artist based on Navajo Nation, who did the murals. He also designed the People's Climate March poster. And does a lot of these photo murals all around Navajo Nation, trying to get people attracted to some of the places where markets happen. And the photographs he took were from the Hopi Permaculture Institute. So this was our initial event. We invited some artists, and turns out a couple of them were doing artworks related to the microbiome. For example, this artist who dug up our sewer, which we needed to have done anyway, and did a performance where she was kind of pouring different microbiomes into the sewer and playing those back and recording them, so you could hear the sound of the sewer. So for me, it's really, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a high-tech kind of investigation. Another artist working on the skin microbiome got dirt from a site called Chamayo, which is where a lot of people will go. It's a Catholic church there, a church there, and a lot of people will go there in New Mexico and take the dirt and put it in special containers, and it's a holy dirt basically. And so he put that on his skin and then measured the, compared to another dirt in an area that not considered that, and kind of saw what grew from those microbes. This is Mick LaRusso, who's been down here at Arts Eye Center. And the other artist was Eve Sibley, sorry. So the house also is a kind of a context where artists can exhibit and do projects that are emphasizing the fact that a lot of this biotech and these devices and this material is part of our daily lives and part of our home. So it's kind of a nice context in which to play around and present this stuff. So Mick's work in the bookcase, and so Biocultura also goes out and does lots of workshops. This is a strawberry DNA extraction, and it grew out of a little bit of a practice, or at least some experimenting that I've been doing for a few years in bioart, using the kombucha scobies, as we saw with Maru's beautiful, beautiful ones. Mine were just kind of go. But I had been interested in setting up a DIY lab. So this is a few years before Biocultura. I would dry these scobies and stitch together gloves, projection screens, and then also prior to Biocultura, built a portable space, a 10 by 10, which is a standard Japanese tea house. So my partner and I created this structure in which we would hold actual tea ceremonies or other kinds of public events where the discussion would evolve around the very precise movements that happen in a biology lab. For example, when you're doing a caffeine extraction from tea, which you see on the tokonoma, the projection in the back, to the impacts that the relaxed nature of a tea ceremony might have on your epigenetics. And we would do ceremonies, but also a radio program that tied in with interviews to the different with experts in the different places where the tea house would happen. And this is just some of the other things that would happen around it. So on the DIY bio, got involved in the VOG Society, Biohack Academy. We now teach that to our students, some things about DIY bio and the code of ethics. And the Biohack Academy is really wonderful because it allows participants to learn how to build biolab equipment from 3D printers and laser cutters. And so they build a centrifuge, learn basic electronics, use it to control with Arduinos. There's one of the centrifuge prototypes. And the encouragement is to kind of hack these different materials. So then most recently, another structure we built, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but the Glow Pod is a structure for growing plants, and in which the lights are controlled by sensors that are measuring water and temperature. And all these plants are from Red Willow Farms, which is a farm on Taos Pueblo that's trying to establish some of the more native plants into the diets of people. So a very kind of different low-tech approach to trying to understand and interface with these kind of higher tech ideas. On our campus, there's a wonderful fly lab, the Crips lab. We have our students kind of grow some of these flies as part of the Biohack Academy and their bioart and design class. And it got me thinking. This is probably like the actual piece that I did really thinking about this microbiome project, or actual experiment, I guess. It got me thinking about insects and their relationship to some of these biodevices. So a lot of the biodevices I've found and learned about were made out of silks. So I wanted to really understand what that silk was about. And I happen to have 3 of these mulberry trees in my yard. That's what silkworms eat exclusively. And so I grew about 80, I don't have the exact, I want to have the exact number now because that's awesome. 80 plus silkworms. And kind of went through the whole process of harvesting the silk, which involves boiling the cocoons, and then traditionally taking a brush and wrapping the silk around some sort of cylinder. And there are a couple of different ways that there's a more humane way in which this is done, where you allow the moths to come out of the cocoon, and others in which you kind of leave the moth in there. It's really quite horrible and very stinky when you're boiling these. So that was kind of my learning experience. I'm not sure where it's going. And some of the other work that we did related to this is a chart that I put together as a beginning point for what kinds of sensors we might make and include in this microbiome monitor, and then what would be the range of formative values, the time scale, and what would be the indication. This is a similar kind of chart that was done by our collaborator Beth Cartier. So Beth comes from semantics and computer science, and so she's really, I'm not going to represent her ideas well, but she works a lot with understanding narrative, and so she was breaking down the model of microbiotic communications into a number of these different categories. So really hugely helpful for our understanding of what we were trying to do. This is the work of Nicola Casas. So he creates high fashion in Milan using computational methodologies, but also highly influenced by anatomy and the body. So he worked to develop a few very beautiful ideas of how this how this device might be worn by someone in a high fashion context. And finally, Alison Kudla, another amazing artist in our group, who created this work, which is a 3D printer for agar, in which it deposits not only nutrient agar, but the plants, seeds themselves, and then grows. And this makes these beautiful patterns that then kind of grow and decay. She worked on a series of these beautiful light box photographs that are kind of imagining a future user of one of these monitoring systems. So this is just an example of that, and that's about all I can say. So thanks.
So, and then Mick Larissa walks in. How great is that?
You didn't mention the biohack.
He
And,
did.
Well, I also
You
showed your Shimayo.
Yes.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
You walked in. You missed one. Just
So like I said at the very beginning, it's always to me fascinating how these seemingly disparate topics, and I know Elena was like, I don't know if I connected. Yes, it all connected so beautifully, because to me it was very clear how important it is for these cultures to cross over, and the amazing work these women are doing and the men who support this work, and how important it is for us to come together right now from all disciplines, and how artists can play a role in experimentally breaking all the rules, asking crazy questions, testing things from different angles. I think more and more scientists are recognizing, and that's what's wonderful about CNSI. They very early supported this idea that we mix it all up and become part of it. So I'm very grateful about that. And Leonardo just celebrated 50 years. I was studying Buckminster Fuller, who said at one point, it takes 50 years for an idea to come from an idea concept to actually become in consciousness of a larger body. I really see this happening. And it's very exciting. It kind of gives us hope. So anyway, thank you everybody here and there, and let's just keep on mixing those cultures. Thank you.
I just find it so strange with Mark just putting the streaming and blocking.
Right.
So is it on?
It's on.
Okay. Are they gonna see us watching? I really love like this, the things that she does with the tobacco, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like are like growing.
Yeah, I wanted to get
She's
it.
an amazing artist. That piece that shows first.
I just saw her at the 50 years of Leonardo celebration.
Oh, cool.
Still live?
Yeah. Oh, but she wasn't able to.
No, I'm with the kids also. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's like I think that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
do that one day a week. Which is all on the weekends.
No,
Are you go to school?
Yeah. Yeah. I got actually I got needed a work study job and found this one and so yeah, that's what I was doing
Are you have been worried about the fire?
yeah. We have like the audience.
Just hearing about that today.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's true.